on our side, it was easy to think these young leaders are ungrateful because they're not seeing how much we're trying. And on their side, they were saying, we left our homes with this in mind. This is the impression. This is we made us expect this. And so that's 2013 to 2016, 2017. It was navigating that, getting to learn that these young leaders are now the future. They're the ones who need to, tell them everything and let them take part in finding solutions. Then on our side, learning to be more realistic with what we're expecting.
With any organization, and especially a volunteer one, there's a lot of ups and downs.
And at that point, it was all this dark, murky, angry, difficult time where everyone was angry with everybody else. But I think in the end, it has worked out well. One, because in that point, Jim had to leave and Levy took over. And Levy in my opinion, had a different way of doing things. And that's where, to me, the leadership and asking young people to take over really started.
Then again, the timings of the residentials, because we were relying a lot on the international schools' holidays. They did not coincide with the government schools' holidays and university holidays. So that was another problem, that getting kids at the right time, at the right place. So because we didn't have the funding.
But that constant worry of money and for me personally, that feeling that everybody is looking up to you to deliver, and you can only go on faith so much.
The good thing about it is, even though Kenwayo had no money, it had people. Yeah, and it had people who are really willing to help. People who are, ready to do anything that required doing. People who are ready to, wake up earlier and go look for mats, or people who are ready to, sacrifice their money to buy food for the players. It had people who are willing and ready to help. And I think that's what, there's some people who will argue with this, but I think that's really what kept Kenwayo afloat. Those players who are willing to do these things are the people who kept Kenwayo afloat.
And it was a transition time also. Some of the youngest people were now beginning to get, too old for the group. And so we're seeing a bit of a transition, not only with the younger people, but also with the leadership as well. And of course, new tutors are coming in. It was kind of a tricky time, and sometimes you're not really sure what to expect when you got there, but you just took what you had and you did the best that you can.
Being in an orchestra and running an orchestra are two different things. When you're in an orchestra, it's hard to realize what's going on in the background. But once you are the one who's doing and making decisions, it's a whole different ballgame.
Things like logistics. So of course we're many, so that means our venues really had to be on point. But of course, maybe things like they didn't open one of the rooms and we needed to be there on time in order to do all these things. And such things which maybe caused the concert to start 5 minutes later, which is not what we usually do. But we are able to, whenever there's a problem, it's usually amazing how guys just, switch over to plan B and figure out how to do things quickly. And most of the times, guys in the audience would not know the things that have happened behind the scenes, like maybe music. Yeah.
What I realized as well as part of being in Kenwayo is really being a musician is difficult. There's a very high chance you might not make it as a career. And it's better to learn this when you're younger. So when you take the risk, you know exactly what you're putting yourself into. And it's good that I saw that early, in Kenwayo. There are better days, but there can be rainy days. But the most important thing is when the rainy days come, you have to remember exactly why you got into this. And once you remember that, and if the reason was solid enough, you don't feel anything. Feel good about yourself. So, rainy days will always be there. That's the one thing I've learned about anything. Life just happens like that, but when it happens, you remember why you do it. Once you remember, everything else is not as important. Teaches you priorities, basically.
Goodwill can only go so far. And if there's not an adequate process of following up on the people doing stuff, checking, are they okay? Are they feeling like their efforts are going anywhere? There can be resentment. Goodwill runs out and people get tired and they get burnt out and then they just step back because it's like your efforts going through a straw. But I mean, at the same time, there was a lot of things. There's a lot of ways that I guess we grew as the leaders of that time, having to constantly put out fires and like just learning to improvise on the spot so that when people have come to a rehearsal, you don't have to see them behind the scenes. So I guess it was, for us, it was like being pulled into, this is what it takes to actually keep this thing running when the overriding goodwill that started it has kind of ebbed away. So it was like having to switch from residential, oh my gosh, the food is amazing, everything is so much fun, to doing the work to make that residential fun, or that rehearsal, or that event.
We had to answer some tough questions, We couldn't hold on to this thing that KNYO was when we had joined, because clearly that's not how it was running at the moment. So we had to answer some tough questions moving forward for how it would run, or how what it needed to be now for the people that are in it, instead of trying to cling on to what it was then when it started. I think we did the best we could. At some point, it felt like, it felt like maybe we're not doing enough to keep KNYO running, or to keep the spirit alive. There were moments in there where we thought, okay, is this sustainable? Can we do this for the next 5-10 years? Is it something we can sustain? And a lot of the times we felt like, I don't know, it felt like things were coming to an end. Somewhere in the middle there, it did really feel like, we don't know, we're not really sure about the future of KNYO. Things got tough, I think. Things got tough somewhere in the middle. And I guess you could only do so much before it was too much for you, because most of us were still in campus, or some of them were working, teaching around Nairobi. People had their lives. They still had to live, and then they also had to make time for KNYO, because it was something that you wanted to do. Otherwise, who else was going to do it? It had to be us.
I think what's important is the why of it. Like, why do we do KNYO? What's the point? Why should we all play classical music together? It's a strange thing to do. Why should we dedicate our time to getting really good at playing instruments? That's a weird goal if you're not a musician, you put it in the context of what other people are doing in their lives. Making art and practicing a skill, it takes such time, it takes such dedication, and making art is one of the things that makes us human. And when you do that in an orchestra, in a team, it needs every one of you to make that piece of beauty work. It needs you listening to somebody else. It needs you sitting in your room on your own doing your practice every day. And it needs you committing to the rehearsal and coming every day. It needs you to get on with this person and this person and this person, even though they might be different from you, even though you might really disagree with them, but you somehow have to find a way to work together to make this beautiful thing, to make this art. And that is a very powerful thing.
That is what has now kept KNYO going. And it's a pride of any nation to have a national youth orchestra. And so we're proud that we can have one. We're proud that we can actually keep it going through all the challenges. But it builds the character of KNYO. It builds the character of the players. And 10 years later, here we are. But we are looking forward to another 10 years, another 20 years of KNYO, and to see where the next 10 years will lead us. The challenges come and we deal with them and we surmount them and we move on. So, and that's been the story of KNYO.